Welcome back to the Leadership Lab, a space where we highlight voice shaping human-centered leadership and better workplaces. Today, I'm thrilled to joined by Jessica Michaels. Jessica, welcome. We have Jessica, speaker, coach, neurodiversity. So I would love to hear more about your story. It's really inspiring that you're helping people out there.
So it starts, from when I was a kid, really.
Yeah.
I was always a very smart kid. I was in like the gifted program, and that really was kind of what my childhood was focused on. Is I was smart, and any other problem I had,
Yeah.
it seemed like the adults kind of thought, well, she's smart, so she'll be fine. But I knew that I was different from the other kids
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to make friends. I just didn't get along with other people. But that was not something that was treated as a problem as long as I was smart.
Okay.
But as I found out, through school and then into my professional career, the world doesn't focus on how smart you are. Really, your success is dictated by how you do get along with other people. That's infinitely more important, is the relationships that you build and how you interact with other people. So I would find myself in these situations where I would succeed at the tasks of whatever job I had, and I would
Okay.
get great opportunities because I was a high performer, but they would end up not going well, some disastrously, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to get along with people. And what I'd find is, no matter how I felt inside, people would say that I was rude or mean or condescending or defensive. And I would get pulled into these meetings by my leadership to talk about my strong personality, that I was
Okay.
too passionate. And it was frustrating because I didn't feel that way inside. So I didn't know how to stop portraying that to people because it's not what I felt. Seemed less important what I actually felt and more important how other people perceive that. So I did what I know how to do because my career has been focused on learning and development. And I read a lot of books. I went to a lot of trainings on emotional intelligence and communication and leadership. And I would understand all the information cognitively, but it still didn't help me change anything. And so I thought, okay, well, either my career is always going to be stopped
Yeah.
here, only gonna, this is gonna happen every couple of years. I'm gonna have success, but then something's gonna happen, or I'll get promoted and then something's gonna happen,
Yes,
and
it's
then I'll
just
be
ups
right
and
back to
downs.
square
Yeah.
one. Yeah. And I didn't want that. I was in my mid 30s. I'm gonna be working for many, many, many more years. And I really thought I was capable of success. So I went to a psychologist. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew that at that point, after, 20 years of this, clearly I was the problem. So I got a diagnosis of autism and ADHD. And I really thought, oh, great. If these things have a name, then surely there must be a quote unquote like a cure, like something I could do, or a pill I could take, or a spray I could use that would make me quote unquote normal. And then all of my problems would go away. But that is not what happens with autism or ADHD or anything in neurodiversity, which just refers to all the different ways brains process information, which includes how we communicate. It also includes like how our body senses work, like if you feel hunger, or
Yeah.
how you know that you're in pain, how you learn language, how you read, the temperature that you feel. All of these things can be different from person to person. And in about 20% of the
Very true.
population, it's very different from other people. So then I had to really focus on, hey, I have this information. Now what? How do I use this to work for me? And then ultimately, how do I help other people that are in this situation? And then how do I help businesses make a good place for all sorts of different brains? And what are the successes of businesses that do that? And how
Yeah.
can I help them achieve that? So it's been quite a long journey.
And that's really inspiring journey. Thank you so much for your answer and thank you so much for sharing that. So I'd love to know like from your work and with leaders, our teams, like what trends are you seeing when it comes to neurodiversity inclusion? Like what are things actually changing?
Yeah. I think the biggest change is the younger generations that are
Yeah.
coming into the workforce now
Hmm.
expect companies to be fluent in neurodiversity. So, 15 years ago, I don't
Yeah.
think you'd ever hear about autism or ADHD in the workplace.
Yeah.
That would be so uncommon, but now,
It's mostly common with the new generation.
yeah, they are. And I think because of social media, the younger generation is very open about if they have ADHD or if they are autistic or if they have dyslexia. So I think some of these things that would have been shameful in the past, now people are treating as, hey, this is just a part of me. And they're expecting businesses to be able to handle that. And so I think that's really critical because most businesses are not prepared. Many businesses and HR departments know what to do if an employee breaks a leg or if they have an employee that's in a wheelchair. How do I accommodate that?
Yeah.
They're not equipped to have somebody coming in and saying, hey, the way I communicate is different. And my manager and I are just not getting along because they don't understand the way I communicate. In the past and now, unfortunately, those things are treated like skill issues, but you
Okay.
can't change your brain. You can't change the way somebody communicates. And is it fair to not let them succeed and progress because of the way their brain works? No, it isn't. So there's this expectation of support of different brain types that younger generations have, and that's only going to increase moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for answering the question that
Mhm.
way. So, like moving to where do most companies right now struggle? Like most when it comes to supporting like neurodivergent talent.
Yeah. Yeah. So many companies have, the only process they really have is if somebody comes in and asks for accommodations. And they'll
Okay.
have a list of like the
Yeah.
accommodations. Again, if it's somebody in a wheelchair, there needs to be a ramp. They need to have desks, at a level they can work at. They need to be able to maneuver. Those things are very easy, really. They're kind of one and done. But accommodations for people who are on the spectrum or who are dyslexic, in neurodiversity, they really vary from person to person because there's such a difference in the level and type of needs that people will have because there's a whole spectrum of the level of severity and how these different things impact someone's daily life and how it impacts their work or even if they can work. Not only that, there even from day to day my needs can change or even I might have different needs based upon the time of day, morning versus afternoon, or I might have different needs depending upon all the other things that are happening. It can be situational. And so HR departments are just not fluent in the language of something that that has that much variation. They really want to just be able to check a box,
Yeah.
and that is simply not possible with neurodivergence.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Like they're not fully prepped for that yet, from my perspective too.
Not at all.
Yeah. So moving to the challenges that we see like for neurodivergent professionals, what are the practical gaps? Like you help them close confidence, communication, like job navigation.
Yeah. And so it's tough, right? There's actually kind of a moral and ethical part to this because for so long the idea was the challenges that neurodivergent people face were seen kind of as moral failings. They would say, oh, somebody's lazy, or they don't have good interpersonal skills, whatever it was. People treated these things like things that could be changed. Oh, you need to be more friendly, or oh, you need to you just need to kind of be a different person, essentially.
Yeah.
And what happens is neurodivergent people in the workplace often do what we call masking, which is acting neurotypical, acting like everybody else expects them to act. But the problem is that takes a lot of effort. For example, I don't naturally make eye contact and I don't naturally smile. If I smile and if I make eye contact, even right now in this conversation that we're having, it's because I'm consciously thinking, oh, I haven't smiled in a while. I should smile. I don't know if I've made eye contact for a while. I need to make some eye contact. And so that's what's going in my head while we're having this conversation. Can you imagine how different things would be if I wasn't using half of my brain right now to focus
Just
on
yeah, just
smiling? Yeah.
focus on those things to not let anyone understand you like in any wrong way.
And so that stress causes a lot of problems for neurodivergent people. First of all, you can't keep it up all the time.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
when you let that mask drop, suddenly people go, oh, what's
You
wrong? Or, oh,
change.
you're different. Yeah, yeah. And it's also physically stressful. It's emotionally and mentally very taxing, and it causes a lot of burnout and it causes like physical problems. Autistic people die about 10 years earlier than the life expectancy for non-autistic people. And a lot of that is this pressure from society to fit in. And so when it comes to what do neurodivergent people do and how do I help neurodivergent people, there's always this line we're treading of how do we help somebody be successful without pushing them to mask and pushing them to just be neurotypical and just ask
Yeah.
neurotypical. So it's a really fine line. I think the best way I can help people is by training employers to create an environment that's neuro inclusive, which means an environment where all employees can be successful, not just autistic people. I'm not just focusing on ADHD people. I want everybody to be able to be the best that they can be by creating the conditions that allow people to honor the preferences that make them able to work at the optimum level. So that's really where I try to be. But of course, neurodivergent people can't wait for employers to get it together. So we do have to work on how do we make this situation tolerable for you? How do we make the situation have as little negative impact on your life as possible? So it's often kind of damage control with my clients and then really working to make workplaces better so that there are more places for people like us to go.
Yeah, makes sense, and I hope like for corporates out there just to take care of this more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
about the tools and strategies, what do you find the most impactful for someone navigating corporate expectations that like don't fit their brain?
Yeah. So AI has been it's been life changing for
Yeah.
so many neurodivergent people. I use AI every day when I work. Every time I write an email, I run it through AI to make sure that it sounds friendly because my emails, the way I communicate, I'm very direct. And that's always been a criticism is that I'm not friendly.
Yeah.
And so I run all of my work through AI so that I can make sure it's like a translator, right? It's translating from, autism speak to neurotypical people speak so that the work gets done without being damaged by the way that I communicate. I use AI to help me, as I have ADHD, to help me keep from missing things that
Yeah.
I might not remember. It's hard for me to take notes during a meeting and still pay attention because I lose focus. So
Okay.
having the AI assistant is really helpful to me because rather than generating a full transcript every meeting, it picks out
Just
the
gives you the
important
summary at the
points.
end.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I can dive more into the details if I need it. It also will help me, do things like find all of the files that relate to this particular topic. So when I'm working on a report, I can easily find all of my resources without spending time going through everything. Because again, those are ways that I can get distracted, that'll keep me from getting my work done. So AI has been a game changer for many neurodivergent individuals. It allows us to not use so much extra time
Yeah.
trying to work like everybody else,
Yeah. It
and
saves a lot of
helps
time, to
us.
be
Yeah,
honest. Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, AI has been game changing.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Like what tools you've went so far?
Yeah. So I'm right now using Microsoft Copilot because the place I work, we use Teams and Excel, all of those tools. So that is, makes it very easy
Yeah.
to weave kind of all of my tools together. I use OneNote as well. I know other people use ChatGPT or Claude. Also, there are apps that people use to help keep them focused. I use Google Keep a lot,
Okay.
but also I use something called Focus Friend on as a mobile app that just allows me as a timer to help me work and study. I have a time timer. We can't really see, but time timers are great because they're visual and auditory. So it helps kind of meet my brain wherever it is in terms of how kind of what I need in that moment. So those are tools that I find indispensable for sure.
So, looking for the future, what do you hope workplaces build to make inclusion more than a buzzword?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, employers expect employees to kind of operate at a baseline, meaning, if they hire me to be, a customer service representative, they expect that I can communicate by email and that I can file things and manage my time, and that I will sort of do everything about the same level of well. And that's what they're counting on, right? They're counting on kind of everybody to have this same level of skill. Neurodivergent brains don't work that way. Neurodivergent people often will have levels of super high skills in certain areas, which is great. And companies want that, right? Companies want the great engineers, the great public speakers, great innovators, people who recognize patterns really well and analyze data. But with neurodivergent people, there are corresponding areas of low skill that cannot be changed. There can be somebody who is the most brilliant engineer you've ever seen, but cannot write an email to save their life, without, that makes sense. Or somebody who is a really great data analyst, but they just don't have the interpersonal ability that companies expect. So companies need to find a way to create an environment where a broader range of abilities is accepted. There's this idea that everybody should think, work, and act kind of the same way, and that's just not true for a significant part of the population, again about 20%. And so companies who want to be successful need to find a way to everybody in, those people who have those really high highs, but they need to be prepared to work with all parts of that person and
Yes.
not just the parts that they think are desirable.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. They're missing this part, and if they focus on those missing parts, it will be really impactful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you create a system that allows for that, you're not only helping the 20% of neurodivergent people, you're helping everybody, because that flexibility is something that everybody can take advantage of, because everybody has preferences. Not everybody has needs that are so significant that they rise to the level of maybe somebody who, with severe ADHD, for example, but everybody can benefit from clear communication, clear systems and processes, knowing exactly what is expected of you and what you're targeting. These are things that benefit all employees. So there's no downside to helping create an environment that is more inclusive for neurodivergent people, because everybody benefits. And I can't think of anything else in business that has that type of ROI.
Right. Okay, so before ending that, if you had one single piece of advice, just actionable advice for leaders listening today, what would it be?
It would be make room for the different ways people think, communicate, and work. Don't be swayed by, if you have an employee that doesn't smile, you might think, oh, that person is unfriendly. But is that really true? Is that demonstrated in their words and actions? Does somebody need to be able to make small talk in order to be a successful engineer? Is that
Yeah.
really part of the job? So, really focus on what story you're telling yourself about people and broaden your base of acceptance.
Thank you so much for such advice. Jessica, that really was powerful. So, thank you for bringing like so much clarity and heart to this work. I know listeners are going to walk away with concrete insights and hope. Thank you for joining today, and thanks for our audience as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jessica.